Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. Now, Google has been around for over a generation. That's difficult for some of us to believe, but it's true. And in that time, it has grown from just a regular search engine into an actual verb. When you look for something on the net using the search engine, you Google it. But sadly, along with the growth of the company and its expansion out into providing ads and other things, it has also turned into a simile. It has become like Antifa. It has become like the Southern Poverty Law Center. It has become like many other organizations that are into the political correctness and the goal of constraining free speech and pushing a progressive agenda. Now, for those progressives that are listening to this right now and chuckling because you think they're just going after us evil righties, please be aware. When they're done with us, they're coming for you. Now, I can sit around and whine about this, or if you've listened to my program before, you know that I like to try and offer solutions. This is a problem that requires expertise in marketing and expertise in computers and a knowledge of how those two mix. Now, I've been involved in computers for a while, and I know a little bit about advertising and marketing, but I wanted to bring in a real expert. And that is one of my favorite guests, Melanie Collette, who is host of Money Talk with Melanie. Melanie, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. Thank you. It's going to be fun, I think.
All right. Now, what we want to do first, Melanie, is give people a bit of your background. For those who don't know who you are and don't know where to find you, just give them a little bit of your background, a little bit of your expertise involving the subject we're going to talk about tonight, and where they can hear you.
Sure. I host a show called Money Talk with Melanie on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio and TV. And it airs Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. every day for an hour. And usually I have a guest on, and we talk all things and anything finance on that show. And you can watch live on YouTube, which usually you'll see me and my guest by going to SHR Media's channel, or you can listen on Spreaker and also chat there as well at shrmedia.com. When I'm not doing that, I am also an adjunct professor in the computer science department at Rowan University. And I teach a class called Computing Environments. And I am, although my background is in economics, once they find out that you can teach technology, because let's face it, people who can teach technology usually are out somewhere making money, not teaching. Mm-hmm. But once they find out that you can do that, usually they will pop you down in a computer lab. So that's what I've been teaching for the last 7 years or so.
And you're on Sirius XM Radio too, aren't you?
I occasionally am on Sirius XM Radio. I'm a regular guest host. I host a show called Patriot Tonight on Sirius XM Patriot 125. It takes place Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. to 12 midnight. The way the show works is they do a rotation of guest hosts, and I'm one of the guest hosts that they rotate through. Sometimes I'm on twice a week, sometimes once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks. They really just kind of play it by ear and rotate us around. And it's a news show, so a lot has to do with the news cycle as well, who they think will be the best fit for the news cycle. But yes, I do that as well. Thank you for asking about that.
Well, that's another reason I wanted you in, because you're also astute in matters of politics, and you have a definite grounding in common sense, and you can recognize social movements and things of that nature. So, folks, this is the person to ask about this subject, which is a lot more complex than it seems. Now, we're going to give you guys an example here of what Google has been doing. One of the things that they've been doing is they have been trying to redefine the language. For instance, they've been trying to redefine what fascism is, ascribing it only to people right of center. Now, we could get into what fascism is and what fascism is not, but this isn't the place for that. We're going to give you another example, however. This one is by Tyler O'Neill of PJ Media, and it's dated August the 31st of 2017. The headline for this one is Google issues ultimatum to conservative website. Remove, quote, hateful, unquote, article or lose ad revenue. And Melanie is going to take over reading this. I think it'll be good. Melanie?
Sure. On Tuesday evening, Google sent a conservative website an ultimatum. Remove one of your articles or lose the ability to make ad revenue on your website. The website was strong-armed into removing the content and then warned that the page was just an example and that the same violations may exist on other pages of this website. Yesterday morning, we received a very bizarre letter from Google issuing us an ultimatum. Shane Trejo, Media Relations Director of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Michigan, wrote on the Liberty Conservative. Either we were to remove a particular article or see all of our ad revenues choked off in an instant. This is the newest method that Big Brother is using to enforce thought control. The ultimatum came in the form of an email from Google's ad placement service, AdSense. The email specifically listed an article on the Liberty Conservative site stating that the article violated AdSense's policies. As stated in our program policies, Google Ads may not be placed on pages that contain content that threatens or advocates harm on oneself or others, harasses, intimidates, or bullies an individual or group of individuals, incites hatred against, promotes discrimination of, or disparages an individual or group on the basis of their race or ethnic origin, religion, disability, age, nationality, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other characteristic that is associated with systematic discrimination or marginalization, the email stated.
Ugh. Okay.
I felt like that part was important. I hope that was
No. It's very important. It's extremely important. All right. Now, just that first part of this article, Melanie, what are your thoughts here?
When I first read this, I was like, this can't be real. This could not possibly be real. I mean, this is the most Orwellian action I've seen taken by a company that I'm stunned that Google would do this, to be honest. And that they would literally threaten someone's livelihood because of the content of an article that's on their website. I mean, how closely are you guys watching this? And like, how dare you alter someone's message? I don't understand it. Like, it's like they don't believe in the Constitution or the First Amendment or anything like that. And it really is scary because Google is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That they have become so powerful. As a matter of fact, I was watching Tucker Carlson one day last week, and he did a whole segment on how powerful Google is, and part of the reason why no one tends to shut them down is because they pretty much donate to everything. So me having a money show, of course, I have to bring it back to it being all about the money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Billions of dollars that they control now. All of that from starting out as just a little search engine. And this really brings it home because so many people, Melanie, and you know this yourself, have begun marketing for their sites through Google. So they control a lot of the purse strings out there of a lot of people. And I honestly think that some people didn't realize that AdSense came from Google.
Oh, you're probably right about that.
Because it doesn't say Google AdSense, it just says AdSense. And I have a feeling that as the controversy surrounding Google grows, it's probably going to go stealthier with the names of its products and things like that, not openly saying that they're associated with Google. But let's hear the rest of the article, because it's not very long.
The email warned the Liberty Conservative that it must either remove ads from that page or modify or remove the violating content to meet our AdSense policies. Please be aware that if additional violations are accrued, ad serving may be disabled to the website listed above, the AdSense email warned. Please be aware that the URL above is just an example and that the same violations may exist on other pages of this website or other sites that you own. Trejo argued that the article Google specified contained no offensive content. Rather, It was merely distinguishing the many differences between the alt-right and literal Nazis. The Liberty Conservative writer suggested that the article was singled out because it was written by former Liberty Conservative contributor James Alsop. Alsop was involved in the Unite the Right riot, which Trejo described as a rally turned riot in Charlottesville, Virginia. Trejo said the article was targeted because it was authored by a man deemed to be an unperson by the corporate elite. Due to the financial constraints, we had to comply with Google's strong-arming tactics for the time being, Trejo admitted. An independent publisher such as the Liberty Conservative needs revenue from the Google ad platform in order to survive.
And there it is. They need that revenue in order to survive. They've made themselves dependent on an organization that is now bringing the other hand around and saying, okay, this is our baton, and we're going to hit you with it if you don't do what we say. And Melanie, did you find it interesting that the parameters that they had for use in constraining the speech are so open-ended?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things about that policy is basically what it says is you can't have an opinion about anything. You can't have an opinion about anything that is touchy-feely. You have to approve, basically, of anything and all things. The first thing that popped into my mind is that it's strictly anti-Christian, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
That was the very first thing that popped into my mind, because to say that you're not allowed to have an opinion about transgenderism or homosexuality,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's construed as hate is strictly anti-Christian. And the first thing that popped into my mind is it's just another way that the system that we're working in is trying to constrain people of faith. And I don't like that, trying to shut us up. Now, if you understand the broader notions behind that, it makes total sense and we shouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, it's disturbing.
Well, and it doesn't just hit Christians either. This hits all free thinkers, be they Christians. They can also be free thinkers on a secular level. This can be not just conservatives, but libertarians. This can be anyone who pokes a toe out of a very tightly defined lane. And if they do that, then they get that toe cut off. Almost literally, because if they have made themselves dependent upon the revenue from AdSense, and guys, remember that name AdSense. Do not use it, or if you're using it, you may want to consider switching to something else. Then AdSense basically owns them. And that's very important. As you said, it's very Orwellian. It's very disturbing. What do you do about that, though?
This is what the tough part is.
Mm-hmm.
Because Google doesn't have an obligation necessarily. See, political ideology is not a protected class. And frankly, maybe it should be. You know what I mean? Maybe there's a constitutional amendment that needs to be involved here, because more and more people are being persecuted because of their political ideology. I will tell you, I myself had something happen to me at a school that I worked in, and I totally believe it was directly because my principal at the school I worked in at the time found out I was a card-carrying Republican.
Right.
I had stellar reviews up until that point, and then at the end of the school year, I was hit with like all these demands and all these things that I needed to change. And it was weird because I had already had 3 like really good reviews, and so my end of the year review didn't really comport with what they had already reported. And the only thing that had happened in between that time is that my principal had come to me and said, how could you be a teacher and in the GOP? And he was legitimately angry. So I believe I was being forced out to the point where I called a lawyer, because that's how unfair the evaluation is and how skewed the evaluation was. I never received a negative evaluation in my life, in my whole teaching career.
Right.
And when I contacted the lawyer, he explained that political ideology is not a protected class. But if we're going to be forcing things like bakers to make cakes for homosexuals, weddings, when it's against their religion, then I don't know how we don't start protecting people's political beliefs, which many times, particularly in the case of conservatives, are rooted in Christianity and the Constitution.
Right. It's going to be very difficult to do, especially when you have an increasing population of Muslims whose ideology is also political. And Islam is a political ideology that cloaks itself in religion. So this is going to be very difficult to increase the rights of everyone and increase the protection for everyone, but to also understand that there are some people who will use those exact same protections to reverse that and destroy everyone's rights. So it's going to be really difficult to do that. Now, in the vein of what do you do about Google, I think, Melanie, and you can disagree with me if you want, I think it is safe to say that the ordinary Joe and Jane out there will not be able to completely get rid of Google. And this program's aim is not trying to get people to get rid of Google, because it's practically impossible now. That is how deep Google has embedded itself in the internet. So to completely get rid of Google is going to be almost impossible if you have any interaction with the internet at all. But you can lessen their impact. You can cost them money. If you don't like their policies, you can do things that will enrich them less. Every click they get, and Melanie, I think you can confirm this, every click they get makes them money.
Yep.
And I think first what we need to talk about before we get into nuts and bolts ways to lessen Google's power, because the less money they have, the less power they have, is to talk about a very common sense thing. Do people actually need, and this is something, folks, that you listening, you might want to ask yourselves, do you actually need to have a smartphone or a tablet? Because not everyone does. Now, everybody's different, and I know some people are going to be going, okay, fool, I'm listening to your show on my smartphone, okay? But
Right?
everybody is different, though. Someone might be listening to this on their computer at home. In fact, I get a lot of listens that way. I've been with the stats. A lot of people listen that way. But there are some who simply don't need to have a smartphone or a tablet to go mobile. You might only need or want to have just what's known as a clamshell phone, a simple phone that is nothing more than a phone. That's all it is. It makes and receives cellular phone calls. They usually have a little phone book inside them, very easy to use. And here's another thing, guys, okay? The plans for them are also cheap, very cheap. So you're not spending over $100 a month for a cell phone plan like, for instance, I do.
Right.
When you're thinking about smartphones, what does a smartphone do for you? What do you really need the smartphone for? Okay, if all you want to do is make phone calls, simple clamshell phone will save you money. And yes, they generally have GPS devices, so you can be tracked through them, okay? But when you're not making a phone call, you can get a little bag or wallet thing to put them in that is what's known as a Faraday cage. It will block the signal. If you want to take pictures, and really all you want to do is make phone calls and then take the occasional picture, you know what? Get a digital camera. They're fairly inexpensive, and you can get much better digital cameras that are just on their own, a separate device, than the ones that are on cell phones.
I'm laughing so hard because I know you were preparing for this show during my show today.
Yeah.
But I'm laughing to myself really hard because almost the entire Money Talk news report was about me gleefully discussing the new iPhone coming out.
Well, no, there you are. No, and you know what? And you know what, Melanie? I love that you said that, because some of us do need a smartphone. People like me need a smartphone. Why? Because my vision is going more and more, and smartphones have the cameras on them already, and they can be used as text-to-speech interpreters. They can be used to read barcodes. They can be used as money identifiers. Melanie, the first talking money identifier I ever saw was close to $500.
Whoa!
Back in the 1980s, that's right. So I have a use for a smartphone, but not everyone does. I hope you'll indulge me, Melanie, while I talk about a little bugaboo that I have.
No problem.
Now, when people are looking for new cell phones, which this is kind of what started me on the idea to do this show in the first place, because I was thinking to myself, I wonder if there is a smartphone out there that does not depend on Google or Apple or anything of that nature. And one of the things that I saw was that the cameras on some of these phones, some of these newer phones, are actually less sensitive than some of the ones on the older phones. And I want to make something clear to people. If someone tells you that less megapixels on a phone's camera is better, don't believe them.
True.
Now, back in the old days, there was a camera called the Mammoth. All right, and this thing was huge. This was made at about 1900. This was way back in the day when cameras were basically a film plate and a bellows that they used to focus a fixed focal length lens, and they would expose it by just basically taking the lens cap off. Okay, this thing was so big. Melanie is seeing a picture of it right now, probably.
Yes, it's a behemoth.
Oh, yes, it is. It was so big that a person that was about 4.5, maybe 5 feet tall could actually stand inside the thing in front of the film plate. Now, this was so that a large picture could be made. All right, and it is because of one common sense thing. The larger the surface is that the light is gathered into, the more you're going to have to work with, be it a film camera or be it a charge-coupled device, which is the oldest form of cell phone camera sensor, or a CMOS sensor, which is the newer form that people are coming out with now. Now, people say that makes a difference. No, it doesn't. It's still a sensor for bringing in the light, and the higher the megapixel rate that you have, the better your phone camera is going to be. And a good stat to check for, and this is kind of tough because these stats are not easily found, but you can find them when you're comparing the smartphones to buy, is the largest image size. That will give you the largest size of the image that can be made from the camera that your phone produces. Remember, the more light and the more data that your phone receives, the better its processor can work with it and the better picture you're going to have. What do you think of that, Melanie?
That's all very true. And all of the credentials that you mentioned, right? It's just, you're going to be like, really? I've also taught digital photography. True story.
Oh, Lord.
I had to teach myself because I knew nothing about photography. It was like, hey, you're going to be teaching all these computer classes, and by the way, you're also teaching digital photography. Good luck with that. Like, no books, no nothing. So, and I recall, while I'm stalling to actually get into the actual digital photography part, I did like a history of photography, and of course this camera was involved in that whole like history thing. That's just like a funny aside. When I saw this picture, I had to chuckle a little bit because I was like, yep, I've seen that before. The history of photography. That's a teacher trick, meaning I'm stalling. Stalling to get around to getting to the real stuff. But me being the technology diva that I am, co-signing any type of antiquated camera is just not in my nature. Now, I will say this about Google. There are other games out there, and you and I have talked about this in the past. There are other things that you can do. Google's not the end all, the be all. The main problem that you're going to have is if you are someone like me who uses the Google apps quite a bit, which I do. And so that is going to be your issue. There are some fundamental, just really good things about the app itself. But we're going to have to do something about Google's monopoly. And that's exactly what it is. If they can break up, what company did they break up not too long? Was it Microsoft that was hit with a lawsuit not too long ago because they controlled everything? I don't see this as being any different. In fact, I see this as being worse.
Oh, yes. Absolutely worse. And first of all, and we are going to get into the rest of it, but I have to say that this is, again, I see this as God's hand working in here because I had no idea you had that background in photography. I have been studying digital photography, and maybe some of this is some kind of attempt to understand my blindness or whatever, but I've always liked making pictures. Even back in the day, in the 1980s, I was using a Pentax K1000 film camera and reading up a lot on photography. And back in the mid-80s, I first began reading on this thing called digital photography, and I've been watching it go forward ever since. And to the manufacturers of these cell phones, I just want to say, listen, guys, up the megapixels. You can do it. The size constraints will not bother you. And to consumers, I say, look for the largest image size, and you're going to be good. Now, Melanie, what you're talking about as far as making a choice in markets, people are going to have to do that. And I'm going to give you an example. Okay, here's a shopping list, right?
Right.
One can of Febreze, one bottle of 409, 3 bars of soap, and 3 boxes of snack crackers. Now that's what I started with. I go online to Amazon. Amazon wants you to join Amazon Prime. Amazon wants you to join Amazon Prime bad.
Yeah. Listen, that's another area of weakness for me. I'm not going to lie. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm a big Amazon Prime fan.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. But okay, my view of Amazon Prime is it's great if you shop there every month and you know you're going to spend money there every month because that gives you savings. But I don't have a lot of money, so I don't shop there that often. Sometimes 2 or 3 months can pass between times that I shop at Amazon, and obviously I'm not the only one. But what they do if you're not a part of Amazon Prime is you wind up spending a lot more money. For instance, individual items that you might want to get. Now, you heard the shopping list that I started with. And if you are not a Prime member, really the only kind of pricing there that made any sense was to buy multiples of everything. So it was 3 cans of Febreze, and did manage to get 1 can of 409, but it was 6 boxes of snack crackers. Okay, and when I finished up that little tiny shopping list I had before shipping was $112. So instead of settling for that, I logged into Walmart.com.
Yes.
I got the same items in the quantity that I wanted, and after shipping, just under $24. So guess who wound up making $24 out of that deal, and guess who wound up making zippity doo-dah?
That would be Amazon. And no, you bring about a very good point. And I've done the same myself. There's months, occasionally, I think in everybody's budget where things get a little bit tight.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, Amazon might not be the best deal right now. Let me see what's going on at Walmart. And Walmart does have better consumer-wise. I actually wrote a paper on Walmart during undergrad in their business model, which is excellent. People hate on Walmart, but Walmart has an excellent business model, and that's why they're successful.
And what Walmart has done is they have carved out a niche in the market for people like me who don't have a lot of money and aren't going to order a ton of stuff every month, and yet we get a nice savings. And I hope that they'll stay in that niche. And Amazon's policies, this is the reason why I got into this. Amazon's policies are Amazon's policies. All right? And it is my choice whether to indulge those policies or go somewhere else. I went somewhere else, and I think and hope that you'll agree that that is what people should do with AdSense and with other Google-empowered things like Dropbox and stuff like that. Yes, folks, I know that my stuff right now is available for download on Dropbox. I'm currently switching over to another file server that you'll be able to get stuff down off of. So Dropbox will be gone by the end of this month because, hey, I use Google a lot myself, but I'm going to do the best I can to deprive them of money. Yes, my stuff is still available on YouTube. Right now there's not really a viable alternative that people are used to, so it'll still be available there. But, hey, when a viable alternative does become available, I'm going to go there. And that, in my opinion, is what people should do. Now, in the vein of doing something about Google, if you have an Android phone or tablet, there is actually something you can do. But there are a whole lot of caveats to go along with this one. You have to be careful to do this. But this is a good article that can help you get started. This one is by Bartel King Jr. of the Make Use Of website. And its headline is How You Can Use Android But Ditch Google. Now, as I said before, folks, you really cannot completely get rid of Google. But if you depower them as far as clicks go, you depower them a little bit as far as money goes. You can cost them money. That will hurt them. Over the past several weeks, I've made a big change in the way I use my Android phone. I decided to go Google free. As it turns out, giving up Google is possible, and the experience isn't nearly as bad as you might think. This is a look at what I'm still able to do without relying on any of Google's services, including Google Play services, and what I have had to give up. And that's going to be the thing, folks. As Melanie said earlier, if you want to depower Google from your phone or your tablet, you are going to be giving up a lot. Google has a lot of applications that they put out, and a lot of applications use Google code.
Yep.
Very, very important. Okay? A lot of those applications use Google code, and a lot of times you won't even know that they do, but sometimes you will. It comes down, guys, to doing your research about the application you're getting. I do this, so I can't blame anybody, but a lot of times I go, I need something to do this. So I'll go to the Google Play Store and I'll get something. And I won't properly do my research. And that's not a good thing to do. It's actually not a good thing to do at all.
Yeah.
Do you identify with that at all, Melanie?
Oh, please. All the time. I rarely ever research an app, and I'm a computer teacher. Like, I know better. But, but seriously, doctor, heal thyself.
Oh, I know.
I rarely ever, I might read the reviews, and that is certainly not researching an app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's sort of researching it on the surface, but it isn't really digging in.
No.
All right?
No, it isn't.
Yeah. No, it is not. Now, guys, there are some things, not only that you're going to have to give up, but some things that are also going to happen if you decide to ditch Google. You're going to have things like slower updates, which some of you, that's going to bother you. And some of you are like me, you don't update a thing until it stops working. And in some cases, you're going to have some security risks because some of the updates will plug holes that hackers find for some of these applications. All right, so careful there. Now, if you want an alternative to the Google Play Store, there are alternatives such as the Amazon App Store. That's Amazon, and App Store is one word. There's also GetJar and F-Droid. These are alternatives to the Google Play Store. So you don't always have to go to the Google Play Store for your apps. Just remember, if you go to somewhere like the Amazon App Store, that doesn't mean that an app from there is Google free. It may very well be an app from Google or an app that uses Google code. So be aware of that. Now, another thing you can do is you can actually replace the operating system on your Android phone or tablet with one that is less dependent on Google. But you have to be extremely careful doing this.
Yeah, yes you do.
You have to exercise extreme caution. My advice, Melanie, you tell me whether you think this is a good idea or not, is if you're going to do this with a new phone, make darn sure that you have an old phone ready to use as a fallback in case you have a disaster.
Absolutely.
Now, the other thing you want to do is three things. Research, and more research. And that's going to require an awful lot of reading. But in this article, which I'm going to share at UBG Contact on Twitter, that's where you can contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, awesome American suggestions. It is the main contact point for the show. Mr. King gives you step-by-step instructions on how to change the operating system on your phone. It will still be an open source type operating system like the ones that are used on Android phones out of the box and Android tablets out of the box, but it will be less dependent on Google. But as I say, be extremely careful as you're doing this, because you can turn your phone into a paperweight.
I want to just briefly explain why you're saying that. Just kind of briefly explain what your operating
Go ahead.
system. That's the computer teacher in me. So your operating system is the heart and soul of your phone. It's the computer that runs everything else in your phone. And so that's why Dave is emphasizing that you need to be extremely careful when you're fooling around with your operating system, because your operating system, if you think of it this way, operates every other app in your phone.
Exactly. And if for some reason your hardware and your software don't mesh and you get an error, then yes, as I said, paperweight. And
Yep.
and
It's a wrap.
or if you can remove the battery, you might be able to pop that bugger out and go and get another one. But now people might be saying, "Okay, Mr. Hypocrite, are you going to do this?" Probably, but I'm not going to do it until I have done tons of research. This could take me months from having thought to do this. All right, because I first had this notion about 3 weeks ago. Okay, it could take me months from that original thought to getting it done on another phone, because I'm going to do a bunch of research, not only on the procedure of how to do it, which Mr. King does explain very well in this article, but I'm also going to do research on the operating system that I want to put in, because they do differ. Okay, it's not just one. It isn't a simple thing. Trust me on that one. I took an initial look at everything that's available, and it is a mind blower. But if you truly want to minimize Google's influence over your phone as much as possible, this is an alternative. Just be careful. And remember, if you can't do that, then deprive Google of clicks. One of the applications that Mr. King talks about in here is called DuckDuckGo, and the proper name for it is DuckDuckGo Search and Stories. Now, what that does is it gives you a search engine that does not track you. Google will track you.
Yep.
Google will track your movements, and it will try and direct you into certain paths and things of that nature. DuckDuckGo will not do that. Now, DuckDuckGo is a silly sounding name, but Google is not
Yeah.
that great a sounding name either.
Yeah. What the heck was a Google before it was Google?
Well, okay, Google is based on the term Google, Googol, and that is a 1 with 100 zeros after it. Okay.
Ah, I know. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that. Taught the computer teacher something. I had no idea.
yeah. See, that's what it started out as. Now, DuckDuckGo, type in http://www.duckduckgo.com. DuckDuckGo, all one word, and it is a very good and simple search engine. I use it all the time.
I've used it since you told me about it.
Have
I
you?
started.
What do you think? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I like it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a great application, as I said, DuckDuckGo Search and Stories. Now, I usually don't like applications that do more than I want them to,
Mm.
but this one actually is an advantage. Now, the first advantage is the DuckDuckGo search. You don't even have to open another web browser in your phone, okay? It opens its own browser and does its own search. And when
Right.
and when it finds what you want, all you have to do is click on there. Yes, it's an extra step, but you won't be tracked. Okay? And the stories part. As I said, I was kind of annoyed by that they added that on, but then I had a look at it. It is a news gathering engine that uses your sources. Okay?
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It starts out with a fairly standard set of sources, but you can edit those. You can take sources out. You can put sources in. If you don't like the New York Slimes, get them out of there. If you want to bring in One News Now, all right, or if you want to bring in the London Daily Mail, you can bring those in. You can tailor the news search to the sources that you like, not the sources that someone else picks. I'm a huge believer in DuckDuckGo. It is so much better than Google, and it is another way to give Google a few less clicks. All right, and now, Melanie, before we get into the next segment, do you have anything else to say about this?
one more thing I do want to add is that you're absolutely right about what you're saying about getting Google less clicks. If we cut down on the demand for Google, that will get their attention. And that's ultimately what the goal is here by seeking out Google alternatives.
There you are. There you are. That's it. It would be nice if we could find some way to sort of spank Google and make them go back to what they used to be 20 years ago, but that's not going to happen. That is what we're doing here. Google is not going to go away anytime soon, but as Melanie says, we can get their attention, and that may cause them to change their policies. But if it doesn't, understand there are alternatives to Google out there. And a final word about that. Watch those alternatives, because there was a time when Google wasn't evil. They became that way, and so can those alternatives. But if we stay nippy, and if we stay active and aware and communicative to each other, we can keep our free speech going on the net and elsewhere. And now it's time for an Awesome American segment, and this time I'm doing it with a guest. This is great. All right. This time's Awesome Americans are the Veterans Awareness Center Foundation in Greenwood, Delaware. And Melanie is going to read this article by Jeff Brown of the Smyrna Clayton Sun-Times, which was posted on September the 8th of 2017, with the headline, Veterans Stand Down Planned for September the 22nd. Melanie?
The 9th annual Veterans Stand Down will take place from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. Friday, September 22nd at Dover's Shuttle Park, 10 Electric Ave. Stand downs are events for veterans who need assistance, some of whom are homeless. It is one of the annual projects carried out by the Veterans Awareness Center Foundation in Greenwood, Delaware. More than 114 presenters will provide basic services, information on benefits, clothing, housing, toiletry kits, a hot meal, and services from the Veterans Administration, barbers, dentists, a mobile medical van, flu shots, behavioral health, suicide prevention, legal advice, and services from the Motor Vehicle Department. A DJ will provide music. Our team works about 6 months putting each event together. We work with outstanding people in business, government, nonprofit organizations, and individuals from across the state, said Liz Byers-Gyron, who created the event with her husband and daughter. We encourage veterans to come out and avail themselves of what we have to offer. They deserve no less for their dedicated service. More than 1,100 people attended last year's event at the Walter L. Fox American Legion, post number 2 in Dover. Retired General Frank Vavala, Delaware's former Adjutant General, will provide opening remarks.
Now, Melanie, I normally give comments on these Awesome American stories just before I close out the show, but as you're the guest, why don't you give one?
I love the fact that people are doing this, and it seems like they really have thought of everything. Barbers, dentists, a medical van, flu shots, behavioral health. So I just commend this family for putting this together every year. It is just fantastic, and it's needed. I'm also glad to see nonprofits and businesses working together, the private sector. If we've learned anything from the goings on with the hurricanes over the last couple of weeks, that we need more than government. We need private entities. We need private citizens to step in, because that's really what it's all about. And the fact that this family is doing this, they're just really to be commended for doing something like this.
All right. And for my part, I couldn't agree with Melanie more. If there is a group of people that are underserved in the United States of America, it is our veterans. They're often forgotten, shunted to the side, and for some people treated as almost an embarrassment. So it is a wonderful thing to see such care being taken of these people who deserve our honor and our thanks. And that is why the Veterans Awareness Center Foundation in Greenwood, Delaware are this time's Awesome Americans. Now, Melanie, before we close out, please let the people know again where they can hear you.
They can hear Money Talk with Melanie on shrmedia.com or High Plains Pundit MoneyTalk.com, Monday through Friday, every day at 5 p.m. And also, occasionally, you'll have to follow me on social media at Money Talk Mel or Money Talk with Melanie on Facebook to find out when I'm going to be on Sirius XM Patriot Tonight, which basically happened. The producer will just call me and say, we need you in 2 days, or we need you this afternoon, or something like that. And I have to haul-tail it up to New York City and go to the studio. So follow me on social media and you'll find out where I am. If you really want to love to talk politics, you can follow me on my personal Twitter feed, which is at NJGOPDiva on Twitter.
And that's it for this time. Melanie, thank you for being on the program. I appreciate you, and I appreciate each and every listener. Thank you all very much, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2017. Anno Domini.